Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and the winner from the poll for today's video was whether or not Nigel Farage even wants Brexit. Now, there are some individuals who clearly, genuinely want Brexit, and a hard Brexit at that, and understand pretty well the implications of this. For some, the argument about not wanting EU laws in the UK is a very truthful held view. They don't like that workers have more rights than would be the case if the UK government alone was determining those standards. It stops them making even more money. They don't like that EU laws are increasingly making it more difficult for them to avoid paying taxes. Of course, that is only applying for the wealthiest in society. The rest of us certainly have to. But Nigel Farage, I have long suspected, is in a different boat. Yes, he's a multimillionaire, but at the bottom end of that definition. He's not even in the same league as the billionaires behind Brexit. He's wealthy, but not actually wealthy enough to benefit in a major way from scrapping human rights in the UK or maintaining lots of tax avoidance schemes, for example. However, he has made a tidy little sum from being an MEP. That being said, thanks to Brexit, he hasn't been earning as much of it lately due to the weaker pound. It's paid in euros. Still, given that he hardly attends any European parliamentary business, it's a good wage for essentially doing nothing. He also gets a good pension out of it, paid for by the British government. People sometimes describe the European Parliament as a bit of a gravy train, and if you're particularly lazy, it certainly can be. I mean, I'd look at it as lots of travel between where I live and various locations in Europe. The travel alone would be quite onerous, and then there's all the meetings, reading documents, forming committees. It's actually quite a lot of work if you take the job seriously, as many do. But if you like Farage, it's an absolute gravy train. He does nothing at all but still gets a pass because he'll argue he's against the EU, so why should he do any work for the EU? He just goes in now and then to be rude to everyone who's actually doing the work. So, with a nice tidy life like this, does Nigel Farage even want Brexit? I keep thinking of him as being a bit like someone pushing the flat earth agenda so that he can sell merchandise to the poor guys who he cons into believing it. But lately I've been utterly convinced of this fact because, let's face it, the Brexit campaign has always been better organised for three main reasons. One, there's a lot of money behind it, and people who are used to running complex organisations, such as international newspapers and the Federation for Russia, for example. Look at how quickly Farage got his party together. One person didn't do that. Two, Brexiteers don't worry about things like the future. They don't have to plan for a post-Brexit Britain because they have no power to do so. People may elect them to parliaments and councils that they don't take seriously, but they don't vote them into positions of real power. This gives them an advantage over politicians that have to plan for the future, the ones who will get power, because if they don't have a realistic plan, people will say, well, hang on a minute, you had this plan, what happened to it? Can't criticise their plans if they don't have any. And three, the parties are one-issue groups. This means that they have no real internal wrangles over what their policies are. A huge nightmare for Labour and the Conservatives, for example, at the moment, whose core values are not really related to this subject. But everyone in UKIP and the Brexit Party has no interest in any policy other than leaving the EU. They don't even have interest in a policy on what to do after we leave the EU. It was actually quite funny. Nigel Farage was describing with his Brexit Party when asked about policies. He says, oh yeah, we'll come out with some policies after the elections. So in other words, he's saying, yeah, vote for us. Yeah, we have policies. I'll tell you about them afterwards, eh? How about that? So he should be playing an absolute blinder in campaigning to get us out of the EU right now. Labour are in real trouble with a massive disconnect between its leader and the rest of the parliamentary party, grassroots membership and even voting public. The Conservatives are simply bursting over at the seams over it. It's always been said that the only thing that divides the Conservative Party is the issue of Europe. In such a circumstance, Brexit is like an Exocet missile for them. Sure, there are more focused parties on this issue, but even they have actual representation in Parliament, much more so than the Brexit Party, but they don't really get the coverage in the news that they should be doing. The media don't follow their own rules on that. So the policies are not really getting out to the public in the way that they should be. So Farage should simply need to keep banging on the same rhetoric he used for the original Brexit referendum campaign, saying how marvellous everything will be. But recently, he's been saying quite a few odd things for a Brexiteer. He is saying that Britain will become poorer. Of course we'll be economically worse off, he said. And he further says that he never said otherwise. Well, he did actually say otherwise. He's also saying that the British people want to spend more on food. They'll be happy to spend more on great British produce, he says. Well, we can do that now. Is he seriously suggesting that we can't buy British produce in the shops right now? Because I don't think that message can be appealing to the people who actually do the shopping in their household, who can do that already. And if people want to spend more on food for higher quality produce, they can already do that. If they want to spend more on local produce, farmers markets, things like that, they already can. The EU doesn't stop us doing that. And no, I don't think people want to spend more on food in general. If they did, they already have the option, like I've just said. And some can't afford to spend more on food, even at the prices they already are, much less if they went up. Hasn't he heard of food banks? No, of course not. Finally, and this is what put the tin hat on it, or should that be the tin foil hat? He said that we shouldn't be sharing security information with European nations. Losing the security networks we have with the EU is one of the most massive problems facing the UK in the event of a no-deal Brexit. It puts our country in a hugely increased risk of attacks. Not just from terrorism, the big stuff, but all manner of crimes will be much more difficult to prevent or investigate without that intelligence. He is literally saying that we should not get intelligence from European countries on criminals or criminal organisations. I mean, what he said during the Brexit campaign almost sounded like a Brexit argument. He said, you know, we'd have all the benefits, follow none of the rules, and we'd all become richer as a result, is what he actually said. Now he's saying we'll all be poorer. Of course we'll be poorer. We'll have to pay more for food that millions of people already can't afford. And we'll face greater security threats as well. It's almost like he's been paid for arguing against the EU, but he fears that losing that easy income if we actually do. So he's throwing a few things out there to help the Remain vote because he can't believe that the real politicians are making such a mess of it. And I think that's it. He couldn't believe that the Leave campaign won last time. How could the Remainers have made such a hash of the campaign? They had all the facts on their side. Now he's even more worried because the Remainers are even more incompetent this time round because a lot of them fear losing potential Leave voters. He's in danger of losing his €100,000 a year for doing bugger all, as well as all the other money he gets for basically being, you know, one of the voices of Brexit. And what else will he lose if we leave the EU? He has no role in Britain's political system. No role at all. Nobody is going to fund him for his anti-EU rhetoric once we've left. It's not needed anymore. How is he going to make money then? I think that's the only answer. It's that he's essentially arguing against leaving the EU whilst pretending he's still in favour of it, so he still has a job to go to after whatever happens. But anyway, there we go. Let me know what you think below. It's a bit of a puzzler. I hope you found the video interesting at least. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, click the bell notification. Until next time, I'll see you later.